Transparency, the longest-running talk show on cable television, continues to be of service for the information needs of the Negrense. Transparency, a no-holds-barred discussion of current and relevant events that are imbued with public interests. Transparency features interview with newsmakers, health, sports, tourism, education, among others. Transparency, a crusade against corruption, injustices, illegal drugs, and criminalities. Get involved and be a part of the solution to the unending problems of our society. And now, your host. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our television program, Transparency. I'm your host, Mike Maghari. Today's presentation of Transparency will be focused on UFOs and aliens, real or product of imagination. Ang aton honored guest for tonight is the former UFO field investigator for the Center for UFO Studies in Illinois, USA. He is the author of the book Unknown and Unearthly, The Philippine UFO Experience, with foreword from Dr. Mark Rodriguez. Currently, he is the founder and scientific director of the Philippine Aerial Phenomenon Society. He attended the International UFO Congress 2016 in Scottsdale, Arizona, USA. Transparency is proud to present to you tonight Mr. Edwin V. Gatcha. Welcome, Edwin.
Good evening, Mike.
Okay. First, we'll talk about UFO. Now, UFO sightings, not only here in the Philippines, in the United States, but also in other parts of the world. Of course, first, we will talk about UFO sightings in the province of Negros Occidental. I understand that the first UFO sightings here in the province of Negros Occidental is from Barangay Matabang in Talisay City. So we'll talk about this, and of course, our honored guest, Mr. Edwin Gatcha, can tell us more about this UFO sightings in Talisay City. Edwin?
Good evening, Mike, again, and I would like to greet good evening to our televiewers. Regarding the subject of UFOs or unidentified flying objects, of course, this is a worldwide phenomenon, and the phenomenon has been reported from practically so many countries, and the Philippines is not an exemption. And we had a lot of sighting cases, especially during the Philippine wave of 1979. In April of that year, so many sightings from northern Luzon down to Zamboanga in the south have been reported to the military. Now, in the case of Negros, the sightings actually came to my attention because of my good friend and Ninong Rolly Espina, a well-respected columnist of the Philippine Star, who actually introduced me to an American writer, fellow journalist, and of the National Enquirer, and he was in Negros at the time to cover the sighting reports. And Ninong Rolly introduced me to him, and he actually encouraged me to become an investigator because there doesn't seem to be anybody who was interested to do the thing. Mm-hmm. And Ninong Rolly, knowing that I'm an amateur astronomer, he said, you'd probably be very interested with this. So I met the guy. His name was Bob Pratt. Mm-hmm. And he gave me a copy of a manual on how to investigate UFO sightings. So, first thing I did was to, do research on where the sightings were reported from. And one of those places in our province was Talisay, the city of Talisay. And so I went and did investigations, ran after people who were mentioned as witnesses during the 1979 wave. And one of them was this guy named Mamerto Demitilio.
Oh. He's the late
The late Mamerto Demitilio, Barangay Matabang
Yes.
in Talisay. Now, his particular case was interesting because he was a lone witness to an actual landing of unidentified flying crafts in the early morning of April in 1979. And according to him, he saw the three objects landing near the Matabang River, and there were three objects, and as the objects landed, one entity came out from each of those three objects. And so the three entities, we call them entities, we don't call them aliens. We call them entities because we don't know whether they're aliens or whatever they are.
Yes.
And he made a very good description of the entities. There were three of them walking around, one of them touching the ground, and they were like sightseeing, doing, and then after a few minutes, went back to their ship, whether if we can call it a ship or a craft, and flew away.
Oh. Did Mr. Mamerto Demitilio told you the height of the entities or the aliens?
Yes, he mentioned something
More,
like, he actually asked me, do you think they were Russians? Because I said, why? What do you think? Why did you ask me that? And he said, because they were rather tall. They were maybe about 6.
How about their clothing?
The clothing, they said they wore something like some kind of a clothing with, they were wearing belt, and they had gloves, and they were wearing something like, he described it as a motorcycle, a cyclist helmet, the one they use for motorcycles. And
Color, what particular color?
He couldn't discern the
clothes
color
were
because
white,
this
or-
was early morning, early dawn, so probably about 3 or 4 in the morning. It's still dark. And the only illumination that provided for him to take a better look at those entities was from the lightings from the nearby lampposts and everything. So he actually also described them to be carrying something like he called Tommy gun. I said, what's a Tommy gun? I know that's Thompson World War II. He said they were carrying it, but I don't know if it was a gun or something, but he said each of them had that thing, which was very interesting, of course.
Oh. So Mr. Demitilio has also informed other residents of Barangay Matabang regarding the sightings? Or other residents have also seen the
No,
sightings?
it was only him because it was early morning. The neighbors were still sleeping probably.
Can you recall who
The
was...
objects did not make, they didn't make any noise, so of course that didn't disturb anybody who were still sleeping. The military also came to know about it, and he was actually interviewed during the time. Colonel Lumong No, I think, was the provincial commander of the
Philippine Constabulary.
Philippine Constabulary, and he told me he was also interviewed by some foreigners. Apparently, I don't know, probably from the embassy, U.S. embassy, or maybe it was Bob Pratt himself also who was there.
Did he mention who was the mayor of Talisay City at that time?
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about the political...
Fernando Cuenca, the late Fernando Cuenca, well-known sugar baron in Talisay, also was informed about these sightings in Talisay.
There were actually several sightings of strange lights in the night sky from the defunct Silay Talisay Milling Company to First Farmers. The one in, I interviewed one lady there who was tending a restaurant for the workers. And she said she saw this light coming on from the south, apparently from Bacolod, and she thought that was a flight coming out from Bacolod. But there are no flights of Philippine Airlines during this particular time.
But there was a sound of...
No, there was no sound. It was just beautiful colors. She was describing it, and she said it was the most strange and beautiful, colorful thing floating in the night sky during that time. And there were others also who saw that thing, because it was early morning. Some people would go there in the cafeteria for coffee. And
So it was not only in First Farmers area in Barangay Matabang, but also in Talisay Silay Milling
yes,
Company.
the other one in the case of the First Farmers, because I was talking with the late Nanding Cuenca, and he said, Edwin, it's very strange because our trucks are in the mountains, hauling canes back to the central, and there was this strange light over near the mountains, and there was a sound that came in their speakers telling them to remove the trucks from the area. And it was a monotonous English-speaking, whoever it was on the other side, and first of all, at first the technicians, they have the control room. They were all kind of like, come on, it's a joke or something like that. But eventually the voice was very consistent, and eventually they called engineers, they called technicians, even the security and
The Sugar Central.
of the Sugar Central. And Nanding Cuenca was telling me about it, and he also went up there and said, what's going on?
So the entities or the aliens were talking in what particular dialect?
They told me it was in English. But the First Farmers case, they didn't see any entities. It was only in Barangay Matabang where the objects landed that the entities came
Were
out.
seen, yes.
But all the rest, they were all just sightings. They were just the one in in Matabang is already a close encounter of the third kind.
Close encounter of the third kind. So aliens, flying saucers, but there were lights hovering above the sky early morning of 1979.
Yes.
What was the month?
That was in April.
April of 1979. So, how about other sightings in the Philippines? I understand also in Pampanga, in Ormoc City, and in other parts of the country.
On the same month of April of 79, there was also a sighting incident reported in Davao. And I corresponded personally with the witness, Mr. Ronald Krupa. He was at the time the, I think, program director for the Philippine Eagle breeding program. And on his testimony, in his narrative account, he said it was about 8 in the morning, and they were about to feed the eagles when one of the eagles started screaming and looking up at the sky. Now, normally this would indicate that there's another eagle flying up there. But when they looked up, it was a very bright object. And he described it as bright as the planet Venus in the daytime. And he said that was rather strange. So he had his assistant get the pair of binoculars for him to take a closer look. And with the binocular, the bright object appeared to be something like a ball, a very...
Not a flying saucer, but a ball.
It was spherical. So it was highly polished sphere, which had two appendages. If you imagine a sphere, there was one appendage on one side and another one below it. So the horizontal appendage, like an antenna probably, is about half as long as the one below it, the vertical one below. And on the vertical appendage, there seems to be a light, like a strobe, which was lighting up intermittently on a regular pulse. Mr. Krupa had the impression that the object was something, probably taking photographs of the landscape below. Now, the sighting lasted for 20 minutes before it just simply disappeared.
20 minutes. How about in Barangay Matabang, Talisay?
In Barangay Matabang, it was probably just maybe about maybe less than 15 minutes.
The vehicle was a spaceship? I mean...
Well, Dimitilio described the craft or the object, because we're not sure whether they were crafts or ships or whatever, but that was where they came out from. And he described them to be, he said to me, it looked like an inverted kawa. Yeah, kawa.
Yes,
It was inverted, so it was, and he said it came down on three legs, which looked like, sabi niya, though tails ng pato kung ano ba lang, So,
in other parts of the country, like you made mention about in Davao, where the UFO sightings took place, that was April of 1979. I understand there were also sightings in Pampanga. And
the ones in Pampanga, I think, is rather recent.
Recent?
Yes,
how many years ago?
I'm not sure, because I have not been following that up. But it's not very long ago. It's only
As compared
to the ones in the book. Because the book is simply a narrative compilation of all of my former file reports on my investigations. And also it mentions certain aspects of how difficult it is to investigate sightings.
I see. Now, the Philippine UFO Experience, the book you have authored, can be available in bookstores, or have you...
The book is only available online.
Online?
You have to place an order online. Because this was published in the U.S.
I see.
In 2009. And it was published in this new system, which they call the POD, or the Publish on Demand. In other words, they will they will publish your book, and if people want to buy, they just order, and then they make the book for only when it is ordered.
Oh, I see. That's the Philippine UFO Experience.
Yes.
You have wrote, and forward by Dr. Mark Rodriguez. When did you finish writing the book?
I wrote this book in the early part of, later part of 2008 and towards, because writing is the easier part. The research and the materials that need to support your writing is the more difficult
Yes, and
part of it.
it entails a lot of time.
Tails a lot of time. It's a good thing that most of the materials, I already have them on file, because I compiled all of this during my investigative working years back in the 80s. I was an investigator from 1980 to until about 1988.
I see. Now, we made mention about the sightings in Pampanga. It can also be seen in the internet. And of course, there are also some other sightings in other parts of the country. Can you mention some?
One of the actually one of the most interesting cases that I personally traveled to do the investigation was the one that transpired in Barangay Valencia in Ormoc City.
Ormoc City.
This was in 1980, March of 1984. And the circumstances of the event was that four grade school students
Yes.
happened to, by chance, to see an object landing in the middle of a rice plantation. And of course, they saw the object, and they reported it back to the teachers. Now, the object stayed on the rice field for a few minutes before it took off again. And then all of the school children and the teachers, they all went to the site where the thing landed.
So they have really.
And there were marks.
Uh-huh. But it has already flown.
It had left already, and but the telltale marks were there. Purportedly, the evidence of an actual physical object landing on a field.
Our conversation about UFOs and aliens are very interesting. We pause for a while. After the break, we will be back shortly. Feel and enjoy nature's best. Visit Jomax Peak at Salvador Benedicto. For reservations, contact JP at cell number 0917-628-9889. We are inviting everyone to come and watch the following upcoming free celebrity shows at Casino Filipino Bacolod El Fisher Hotel. MYMP live on November 8, Wednesday. Show starts at 8 p.m. at Casino Filipino Bacolod Entertainment Area, El Fisher Hotel. Admission is free. Anton Diva live on November 14, Tuesday. Show starts at 8 p.m. at Casino Filipino Bacolod Entertainment Area, El Fisher Hotel. Admission is free. Mang Kanor and Cougars live on November 22, Wednesday. Show starts at 8 p.m. at Casino Filipino Bacolod Entertainment Area, El Fisher Hotel. Admission is free. Michael Pangilinan live on November 29, Wednesday. Show starts at 8 p.m. at Casino Filipino Bacolod Entertainment Area, El Fisher Hotel. Admission is free.
All about the paparazzi, but they don't get into our party. Tell the bellhop that I'm sorry. We 40 deep in the lobby. Travel the world with the posse, but soon I'll be home.
Welcome back to our program Transparency right here on Sky Cable Bacolod with your host Mike Maghari and of course our honored guest Mr. Edwin V. Gatcha, the author of the book Unknown and Unearthly, the Philippine UFO Experience. Now, going back to our conversation about UFO sightings in Ormoc, Leyte, can you tell us more about it? I understand there were so many students who went to the place where the UFO landed. Are there also other developments and other people have seen the object?
Well, it was only the four grade school students that actually saw the object. The rest only saw the evidence left by purportedly the physical presence of an unknown object. But what is good is that they called up a local photographer to take photos of all of those.
So it's included
markings.
in your book?
It's also in the book, yes.
Oh, I see.
And when I visited Ormoc, Barangay Valencia to investigate that incident, just before that, there was the good opportunity was I was invited by the Divine Word, the defunct Divine Word University, to conduct the lecture for their science teacher summer camp something. So it provided me an opportunity because this was in Tacloban City and Ormoc is only about a couple of hours away. So I said I will have to proceed to Ormoc to do the investigation myself. I had to trace where those boys were, and at the time they were already in high school, and I spent a lot of time asking questions, talking to them, letting them make sketches. And the sketches that they did for me were practically the same sketches that they did years ago during the time when they really witnessed the object. So it was interesting talking to them, and I believe it was one good, solid case of or presumption of the reality of the UFO phenomenon.
I see. Huh? Now, aside from the Ormoc sightings of UFOs, also in Pampanga, in Davao, in Talisay, are there also places where UFO sightings were made?
In the Philippines?
Yes.
There was one report from Mindoro, but I had to check with the mayor, the local mayor, and the local government responded telling me that they could not find the witness. They could not find the guy who purportedly witnessed the landing of something there. Now, I think another very interesting case that I came across was witnessed by no other than Father Angel Hidalgo himself of the Society of Jesus at the Manila Observatory.
Uh-huh.
So, Father Hidalgo narrated that that night I went up the observing deck and said, it was a nice night.
That was in Manila.
This was in Manila.
Uh-huh.
So he can see the Marikina Valley from that vantage point of view. When all of a sudden there was this very bright light, with varied colors, tear-shaped object, which was, he said it was one of the most unusual spectacle he has ever seen in his life. Although the duration of the apparition was only a few seconds, he said he did try to make the report in the interest of science because supposedly he didn't want to report those things. But he said in the interest of science he decided to come forward, and this was published in the national papers. That's how I came across about that. Now, another Jesuit there, the late Father Hayden.
Uh-huh. The Manila sightings of UFO, when was that?
This was also around the same
what
year.
year?
Around
79
79 also.
Uh-huh.
because I said the year 79 was the year of the Philippine wave. And when we say wave, means it comes, you see it here now, they see it there, and then the following day or the following week, it comes back, So for that particular period of time, thousands of people have seen all of these objects. So we couldn't say that they're products of the imagination, if that's what you're trying to
Yes.
say. And Father Hayden, because I was with Father Hayden together with the Manila Observatory team for the observation of the 1988 total solar eclipse in General Santos. So I was talking to Father Hayden because it was at the time actually he was our scientific consultant for the Philippine Center for UFO Research, which is based in Bacolod actually, by the way. And Father Hayden was telling me about his experiences on the aerial phenomenon, and he said he had witnessed with some top-ranking military officers of the Air Force in the U.S. In a secret meeting room, and they were viewing and reviewing footages of films taken of these objects. Now, remember, during those times, there was no YouTube, there was no digital technology.
Yes.
So, photographs taken during those times were really something that you would be very hard to tamper with.
Yes.
Because they're on film, and it's difficult to tamper each frame. So, Father Hayden was telling me that the U.S. government knew that there is really something. It's for real.
For
And
real.
I'm sure later
Not-
on in your
not
ending
on the imagination.
quote, you will say something about that. Yes, it's that it actually worried the military, not only the American military, probably the Russians too.
But the experience of Father Hayden was done in the USA or here in the Philippines?
It was in the U.S.
In the US. Oh.
because
Now,
he was the only astrophysicist at the time here in at the
a
Manila
Filipino.
Observatory.
A Filipino.
No, he's American.
An American, I see. Now, you made mention that you were the former UFO field investigator of the Center for UFO Studies in Illinois, USA.
Yeah.
Tell us what were your investigations made?
I think I mentioned earlier about my meeting with Bob Pratt.
Yes.
And when he encouraged me to become a local investigator for the center, I said, why not? So what I did was, I wrote to the late Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who is considered to be the world's foremost authority on the study of UFOs. And Dr. Hynek himself wrote back, and he was really very, very, he was trying to encourage me really to join as one of the investigators. So I said, yeah, well, of course, I'm interested. And that began my adventure into the world of UFO investigations.
Now, about your other experiences in your field investigation about UFO, aside from the Illinois Center for UFO Studies, you also conducted field interviews about UFOs in other places in U.S. or
Now,
in other parts of the world.
I was basically, I passed the exam. Because you cannot be an investigator without, if you don't pass the exam, they have
Yes.
to see that,
How many Filipinos
I think
as
at the
field
time I was the only Filipino
field investigator?
field investigator. Well, there were others who, like introducing themselves as being, they know things about the phenomenon, but I don't know. I took the exam, I studied the manual, and then because they want you to be professional and of course credible and everything. So I had to pass that exam before I became an investigator. And when I did, my first field interviews were of course conducted right in Negros, where UFOs have been reported to have been sighted by so many people. And also by correspondence, like with Ronald Krupa, my actual field trip to Ormoc, the Manila Observatory, and so all of these, all of the reports that I did were all sent to the center. It goes through a coordinator in Alabama, and that is where they study the reports. Because you see, the scientific study of aerial phenomenon is a very difficult thing. Because first of all, you don't have any physical spaceship to analyze in the laboratory. So you only rely on the statement of the witness.
Witness and witnesses.
Witness and witnesses, yes. And people who purportedly have, experienced these things. So part of the investigation is to establish the credibility of the witness itself. So the best qualified people to do investigations are like the detectives, police, people, even journalists are very good candidates for field investigators. So
you passed the field investigators exam.
Exam, yes. It was a 100 item. And
for UFOs.
For UFOs. Because some of the questions are very practical. Like, for instance, you see an approaching aircraft. Now, you might say, is it an aircraft or what is it? But it has green and red lights. So, if you see an approaching aircraft, which side is the red light? So, if you're familiar with aircraft, then you know that it's always to the right.
Now, in the internet, I've seen UFOs or sightings of UFOs with aliens landing, live aliens. I understand.
Well, I'm sure they're probably alive because those things don't carry dead aliens, probably.
How about in other parts of the world? Have you also studied about sightings of UFOs?
There are hundreds of thousands of sighting cases all over the world. One of the areas that was of interest to me, but very difficult in the case in the Philippines, are the sightings made by pilots. Because pilots are considered to be highly qualified professionals, and if they start seeing UFOs, people might just think, well, he shouldn't be flying. But I have come across cases where Philippine Airlines pilots really filed a report on the sightings.
UFO sightings.
Now, these reports probably were not known in the local media, but because they are filtered through Clark Air Force Base, it goes to the files of Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was actually that body that they created to conduct investigation of UFOs. On one hand, they tell the public, well, it's just swamp gas or, On the other side, they're really very serious and worried about the reality of the UFO phenomenon. So, by December of 1969, I think they closed Project Blue Book. But some of the sighting cases in the Philippines before in the 50s and the 60s, I saw them in the files of Project Blue Book. Did the research on that.
But the Project Blue Book terminated in 1969. But
They are still actively actually investigating.
oh, I see.
sighting
Because
cases.
1969 was the Blue Book closed, and the sightings in Talisay was in 1979.
Yeah. Well, Project Blue Book was nothing but more of like a clearinghouse for reports coming in, you know, and probably to cover up the reality of the phenomenon. They just said, "Oh, we're done with it. We're not investigating anymore." I wrote to Clark Air Force Base, and they told me, "Well, we're not in the business of investigating anymore." You know, so
Our conversation is very interesting about UFOs and aliens, no? For the first time on Transparency, we have featured this particular phenomenon, no? Very interesting. Of course, we still have a few minutes of our time on our program. We will be back shortly. For all your hardware and construction materials, come and visit Well Trade Marketing. Well Trade Marketing has all the complete line of hardware and construction materials, from paints, steel bars, cement, nails, GI sheets, and many others. You name it, Well Trade has it. Conveniently located at corner Lopesina and Rosario Streets, Bacolod City. For more information, please contact 434-2672-274. Welcome back to our program Transparency right here on Sky Cable Bacolod. Now sa sining mga tinion para sa aton nga mga viewers abi may dako nga happening parte sa sining oath taking sa aton nga mga mechanical engineers, no? Ari subong si Engineer Henry Espallado sa pagpahibalo sa aton kunano ini nga occasion, engineer.
Ginapahibalo gani ang tanan nga mga graduates, new graduates ang mechanical engineer sa Bilog ng Negros. May pagahiwaton nga iya sang sponsors ang Philippine Society of Mechanical Engineers Negros Island Chapter with the Professional Regulatory Board of Mechanical Engineering, at the same time PRC, Professional Regulation Commission, nga pagahiwaton on sa November 3 ini sini nga sinana. November 3 alas 3 Biyernes
hapon.
dito sa hapon, dito sa Colegio San Agustin Auditorium.
Welcome back to our program Transparency right here on Sky Cable Bacolod. With your host, Mike Maghari, and of course, our honored guest, the founder and scientific director of the Philippine Aerial Phenomenon Society organization, Mr. Edwin Gatcha. When we were talking about your field investigation in the U.S., and of course, this is all about UFOs, no? Now, what made you very interested about UFOs? Why? I understand you have also worked in tourism, and why shifted your interest to UFOs?
Mike, actually, I'm a man of many interests. My first love was actually astronomy. And as early as I was in the 4th grade, I was already reading books on astronomy. And until I graduated in high school in San Lasal, I was still really doing active astronomy work. And but during those times as well, the subject of the aerial phenomenon also caught my interest, simply because probably we want to satisfy our intellectual curiosity
Yes.
about, the answer to such questions as, are we alone in the universe? Or
Yes.
are there probably other creations? We call it creations. Are there also other intelligent beings or whatever? It has something to do with life. Does life only confined on planet Earth, or do we also find them somewhere else? So these are questions that sometimes you think about it. I mean, it's not probably everybody does that. But certain people, some people, in fact, a lot of people, sometimes would question it has something to do with our own existence also. If we are alone in the universe, we are living a very lonely life in this vast universe. And it also, it's also somehow related to the question of what really is the purpose of existence, for that matter. So, this phenomenon purports to provide evidence that most likely and definitely we are not alone in the universe. we are in the company of others.
The others. I could still remember the movie E.T., no? Extraterrestrial Encounter of the Third Kind. So, you published a book about the Philippine UFO experience. And of course, it deals about UFOs sightings in the country. Now, are Filipinos really interested in buying your books since you have published it?
Well, there are a lot of interests, but there are some constraints. Because first of all, it's not available here. You have to order them online. Second, it's of course it's expensive. I mean, the book costs about $28, and plus shipping, it might cost you total about $35.
$35. You multiply it by 50,
So
more than
it's
50.
a little
Expensive.
heavy, yeah. And I mean, it's not a priority to a lot of people, so it's. I wrote the book simply as a kind of a memoir on my.
How long did it took you to finish the book?
As I said, writing the book is very easy because
You have all the
I have most of the materials that I needed because these were compiled in the last 20 years.
Oh, I see.
So my compilation of reports in the last 20 years could fit into a book with about 430 pages.
Now, I'm curious why you have founded the Philippine Aerial Phenomenon Society, the objectives, the purpose of organizing it, and who are the people involved in this organization?
Well, why I founded it, it's simply because I see the need in this particular field that there should be a group which should be able to educate the public about the subject of aerial phenomenon, what it is not. We also, basically, it's public information. It's also because we also want to encourage people and we train people how to investigate, how to file reports, so that these incidents are more or less, gathered, collated, and we can archive them, we can put them on files. For anybody else to do research, then we have all the materials.
Can you make mention about the people
Oh,
involved?
yeah. Currently, our president is Gary Kier. He's based in
Manila?
in Baguio.
Uh-huh.
Our vice president is Mark Singson. He's also an amateur astronomer and my fellow member in the Astronomical League of the Philippines. Our secretary is Ms. Carion, who is also into the paranormal. We have Michela Esparas, who is our treasurer, acting treasurer. She's more of a mountain climber than an investigator. And we have Edgelat, who is our director for operations. Edgelat is also a fellow member of the Astronomical League of the Philippines.
I see. You made mention about the Astronomical League of the Philippines, and you were putting or you are helping organizing the Astronomical Society of Negros, no? And during our previous interview, you made mention about the officers to be headed by the former mayor of Salvador Benedicto, Attorney Jomax Ortiz, and of course, also Attorney Brick Reyes is involved, Engineer Mascuñana, Robert, and Henry Espallado, no? And of course, you have a seminar, scheduled seminar at the Colegio de San Agustin de Bacolod regarding the Astronomical Society, no? And of course, you will be conducting a seminar for those who are interested to know more about astronomy.
Yeah.
No. Now, astronomy and UFOs are related, I understand.
Well, in a way, yes, because astronomy deals with the universe, and apparently aerial phenomenon could either be also be part of the universe, in a way. But of course, astronomy is it's a pure science, while aerial phenomenon is still in its infancy. I mean, the scientific study, because not like astronomy where you can see the stars and if you cannot, for instance, get the star and put it in the laboratory, but at least you can get the starlight and study the starlight, and you would know what makes up the star. But the UFOs is a very elusive subject, which makes it very difficult to study. So, practically, there really are no experts on UFOs because nobody is an expert on something you don't know. Nobody, although UFOs are real and not a product of your imagination, the next question now is, where do they come from? And why are they here? What's the intention? So these are things that we still don't know. You cannot be an expert on that because you don't know anything about it.
Okay. Since our time is running short, no? Personally, I will ask you, are UFOs and aliens real?
Yeah,
Or products of imagination?
My answer is real. I just mentioned that the reality of the phenomenon is it is real. So believe because they exist.
Okay, last words, Edwin?
Well, I would like to, of course, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. And I'd like to greet our televiewers. Those of you who may be interested with the subject, we have a website. You can Google that website. And now you would know who to call when the next time you see some strange lights in the night sky.
Okay, very interesting aton nga conversation with Mr. Edwin V. Gatcha, the founder and science director of the Philippine Aerial Phenomenon Society organization. Our words of wisdom tonight on Transparency comes from General Nathan Twining. He said, and I quote, "This flying saucer situation is not at all imaginary. Something is really flying around. The phenomenon is something real and not visionary or fictitious. This is your host, Mike Magari, saying thank you so much. God bless everyone. You have just viewed Transparency right here on Sky Cable Bacolod. Be with us again every Monday, 10 p.m., Channel 40. Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, 8 p.m., Channel 32. And Sunday, 12 noon, Channel 40. For comments, suggestions, and ad placements, please contact Mike Maghari at cell number 0919-260-6943. Keep informed. Keep it here on Transparency, Sky Cable Bacolod. Thank you for watching. Happy